Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today, and I am excited. We got Chad returning, we got Clay returning, we got Sean and myself. We're going to be talking Jordan Peterson. Now, I sent him a message to see if he wanted to come, but I haven't heard anything back yet, so we'll have to do this without him. But while I'm excited to get started, y'all should be too. Do the things, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff, get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Fridays for The Collective and Wednesdays for The Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section, and we can hit those throughout the show. Other than that, if you want to stay in the loop with everything that we do here at The Collective, make sure you are signed up for the Reinforcement Loop. That is our weekly newsletter, and that way you can know all about the show, as well as getting some interesting Sean's thoughts on everything that we do. So, other than that, let's get some intros out of the way. Chad, you're on top. 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
Chad McLean, CEO of Mental Joe Apparel out here in Phoenix, Arizona. You're rocking it, dude, like always.
I even got your hat on. I just special for you. I had to wear this one. Clay, how about yourself?
Yep, Army veteran, United States. I'm in Virginia. So, yep, that's me.
Bam. Living in his gym, which is, I love that. Sean, how's the mountains treating you? Oh, you're muted.
Things are good. Looking forward to this conversation. I know that we're going to do sort of like our intro on Jordan Peterson here, lickety split, but I want to get in front of the boys because I know you're going to start with Chad, then it's to Clay, then it's to me, and then those guys will have established their position, and I think I should establish mine first because I actually requested this podcast. And the request came about because so many people have said to me over the years, man, you sound just like Jordan Peterson, or he sounds just like you, or et cetera, et cetera. And I'm setting the stage properly now. I've never read any of his books. I don't know much about the guy other than all the clippy McClips that are on the internet that get swirled around every week. And of course, I've seen some long-form podcasts of him, and I've seen some long-form debates where the podcast isn't set up to set him up for success or set him up for failure. I've just seen some neutral, long-form podcasts that are just debating about all kinds of things. And so I feel like I've seen a side of Jordan Peterson, but I want to make sure that everyone understands, mostly the guest panel, that I am like almost a noob, as almost a zero subject matter expert when it comes to Jordan Peterson. So his 12 steps, I don't even know the first step. Now, does that make me the devil? I don't know, or a dragon. But whatever it makes me, like I'm coming in this one by my own request so that I can keep my mind open, so that I can listen to the opinions of guys that I respect. And because it seems that a lot of my friends are not just fans of Jordan Peterson, but try to live their lives through certain tenets of his that they find to be extremely useful. So maybe I've got a gap in my toolkit, as it were, and that's really why I asked Chance to put together this podcast, to teach the noob, me, what I've been missing, maybe.
Well, I mean, you think you know me, but I was actually going to start with myself. So just on that one. But yes, it is. The idea is to talk about Jordan Peterson, not just him specifically, but like the teachings, what he's kind of espousing to the world, and whether or not those things are effective, accurate, things like that. And I'm excited to get into this. My experience with Jordan Peterson is I have read both of his books, and I have attended one of his recent A Night to Change the World, or kind of dealio things. I quite enjoy what he has to say, and I do agree. You sound very much like him. A lot of the things that you say are very similar to what he says. So I'm looking forward to this. Chad, what's your experience with Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, kind of funny. We were talking, in the green room, like Clay, he went down to a Jordan Peterson University filming. And what was crazy is when you actually reached out to me, I did the same thing. Jordan Peterson was out here in Phoenix, and he did a Jordan Peterson University talk, and I got invited to that. And to like sit in that room, and be, 2-3 feet from this dude who's, this day and age, maybe philosopher / psychologist. I mean, he's just got a plethora of stuff that he knows about, right? So just sitting in that room and just sitting in there and soaking it up and, writing and taking notes and trying to understand how he thinks that different things. And like Sean said, all the little different hubbub clips that go around those clips, a lot of those clips, kind of sit in the back of my mind. So I take a lot of those to heart, and I try to live by some of those clips. One of my favorite clips that Jordan talks about, and I'll screw it up, but you might have it, is, your kids are only 4 one time. So they're only young one time in their lives. So you've really got to sit and soak that in. And I was in a time in my life where I was going through my mental health issues and not really being a plugged in father. And so that really hit me at a moment in time that I needed to hear that, to say, damn, like, yeah, that's right. These guys are only small one time. And I only have one time to be a dad to create a strong foundation with these dudes. And so it's those little clips and those snippets that Jordan have out there that I think a lot of people resonate with. And for me, it's just, I'm really getting into trying to read his books and understand his full package of philosophy and what he talks about. So I'm kind of a noob, kind of like with Sean there, but I'm really open to his ideas and his thought patterns on everything.
I'm excited to see where this goes, because I have a feeling we're getting into some interesting ground. Clay, what's your experience with Jordan?
Yeah, so the way that I got into Jordan Peterson or started following his talks was through addiction. So he was actually a really renowned addiction scientist in the realm of psychology. He did a lot of work on alcoholism. So I would say it seems like another life ago. I was, an addiction counselor in like a low-level addiction facility that's state funded, but some of his videos on addiction were probably some of the more interesting and honest that you can get. It's kind of it's an interesting world to get into addiction. So it's really hard to find good information. And he was really, really honest about some of the mechanisms that play with addiction. One of the things that he talks about is if you want a metric to how well a society is functioning, look at the addiction population. So that concept in and of itself was really interesting to me. From there, I got to understand him a little better. The thing about Jordan Peterson is he's really interested in Carl Jung, who is a pillar, if not the pillar, of depth psychology or psychoanalytics, which is also kind of my theoretical orientation. My education is in counseling and psychology. When you go through the programs, they kind of they get you to basically orient yourself on like, what are your views? Where do you come from? And mine is definitely the psychoanalytic depth psychology component, where Carl Jung is the predominant voice for that, a pillar, if you will. And Jordan Peterson speaks a lot of Carl Jung's thought processes and philosophies, which are not easy to understand at all. So yeah, that's kind of my intro into Jordan Peterson, is through addiction, and then through psychology and counseling, and then his voice became very loud, especially in Canada when they had the bill where they were trying to basically make it illegal to not call people by their preferred pronouns. Not to get into the political sphere, but he was a huge voice in making sure that speech didn't get regulated, that our freedom of speech didn't get made into laws or controlled. So I kind of followed him from there on out with his books. His first book is Maps of Meaning. A lot of people don't know that. They only go to the 12 Rules of Life, but it's this deep dive into the architecture of belief. That's the subtitle. So if you really want to get into them, read that book, because it took him a long time to write, and it's incredibly dense.
Yeah, and you know what? I said I read both books. I just remembered he actually has what, four or five books out now. But
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think he's got like 12 in total. Like there's a ton of stuff he's got out there for sure.
There you go. Well, then I have only read two. Let's put it that way. I haven't read both. But there is one question I want to ask right off the bat to Sean specifically, because you were a bit of a negative Nelly when it came to JBP for a little while. You had a bit of a chip on your shoulder, and I know you don't hold that against him by any means, but I just want you to explain a little bit of where you were coming from initially on maybe some of the detractions that you saw from him. What do you think?
Well, I'm glad you reframed it into detractions rather than a chip on my shoulder. Because I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. I have an opinion. And so my opinion is this, and it's not just specific to Jordan Peterson. It's generalized to anyone who falls into a category that I assign as such, which I'll describe right now. If someone has gathered wisdom from a dusty book, and they've cobbled that together and are now delivering wisdom out to the world, and that wisdom is not based in dusty boots experience. In other words, a ton of life experience, not in the trenches, but in the trenches of life, out there learning really hard lessons deeply embedded in life rather than deeply embedded in a book. And so my initial observations from him were, I know this is going to put some people off, but this was my sort of loose definition of him when I first saw him. It was like a dusty academic trying to spit fire like he was a Navy SEAL. And so I just didn't care for it. I didn't care for the vibe. He just put me off right from the get-go because it felt to me like he was trying to represent something that he isn't. So I'm okay with someone sticking to the academics and the intellectualism. I'm all okay with the wisdom. I'm all okay with the, Ryan Holiday's with the stoic delivery. I'm good with that. Ryan Holiday doesn't have to pick up a rifle and bayonet for me to appreciate what he's doing, because he doesn't put out an energy like he's a freaking Navy SEAL. And so that was the thing that put me off initially. I might have misread it, but over a period of time, I've listened to a bunch of my brohemos who have said lots of good things to say about Jordan Peterson, and almost in the same paragraph or sentence even, they'll say, and you sound just like him, except different. And so I'm here again to establish that my initial entry into Jordan Peterson kept him at full arm's length so I could watch him more closely to try to better understand why he put me off initially. And we wouldn't be having this podcast at all. Never. If I didn't think that there was wisdom to be discovered by me through this conversation. I know I'm playing catch up. And I know that to some degree I'm the bad guy in this one. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows that my feelings were as such. I've changed my mind on certain things. My feeling is now a bit different. This conversation will help clarify this, or perhaps not. Let's off my shoulder. But I'm looking forward to seeing how I view things, an hour and a half from now.
Bam. I like it. And, I describe it as a chip on your shoulder. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't really a chip, but there was a hint of just, I don't like it. And I do hear you. There's a lot of people in academia that will espouse all kinds of things that have never lived it. They don't understand it. They just are regurgitating information, for lack of a better word. So I totally understand it. Now, before we get into the videos, I want to see if you guys have any other thoughts, because I have a bunch of videos. I have not curated them. I have not ordered them. I have not played in any way. I'm just going to start throwing them up, and then we're going to kind of talk about it from your guys' point of view. It's interesting that you brought up Jungian philosophies, because this video right here that I have started up starts with that. But
I should have also added this. It just popped into my head right now. One of the reasons that I'll expose my newbiness to all kinds of things, I'm sure, during this conversation. But Clay, as an example, one of his first or second appearances on the podcast, and you've been on here a few times now, pal. Clay was establishing that he was an addiction counselor, and he'd learned things along the way. And we were having a conversation on the podcast, and it was pretty evident that I have like almost zero understanding of that world. And I remember at one point in the conversation, not the specific details of the conversation, but at one point I thought, man, I've got so much to learn about so many things, because Clay is talking about things that I don't understand. I need to understand these better. We need to have Clay back on the podcast, ... And here we are. And that's how I think. That's how I live my life. Clay said things that challenged my worldview that I had to better understand. And henceforth, I have better understood. And so, again, if Clay wasn't here and if Chad wasn't here, there'd be other people in this panel right now that would challenge my worldview on this subject. And I'm looking forward to it. So please don't anyone out there think that I entered into this with a closed mind. It took an open mind to enter into this with an open mind. So here we go. Let's see where it goes.
I like it. And I do just want to remind everybody that's watching, if you guys have thoughts, questions, or dissenting opinions, anything at all, put them up in the comment section and we can engage those throughout the show. Dan jumped in here earlier. He said, I was thinking about writing a book soon. Maybe I need to rethink it. But let's get into this. I'm just going to pick one of these at random and we're going to figure out how to deal with it from there. Here we go.
Feels itself in accordance with our aim. That's how perception works. That's a hell of a thing to learn. Because if the world, for example, appears to you only as thorn-bearing obstacles, right? If you feel that everything's arrayed against you and there's no pathway forward, if you feel that you're surrounded by foes and obstacles instead of walking the golden pathway, accompanied by allies with the world on your side, you might ask yourself whether or not your aim is wrong.
Bam, right off the bat. Spitting fire. What do you got? Let's start with Chad. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, he talks about the walk and the thorn and stuff. You know, not like I said in previous podcasts, I was one of those guys, very victim mentality, right? Very boo-hoo, woe's me. And I never really understood how to get it out of my own way, right? Until, like I said, roughly about 5 years ago. And so when I see stuff like this, like Sean said earlier, it's like my mind is expanding. Like I want to learn more. I want to understand these different philosophies and different degrees that people are thinking at. Because prior to that, I was just a knuckle dragger. Man, there was brick wall and that was it, right? I didn't look around the corners or under it or over it or anything else. I didn't look for different ways. I just kind of gave up. And so with stuff like that, you can hear that. And now I can kind of like paint a picture in my mind of what it means and how to walk that path. And, you know, I feel like I'm doing that now with a, sense of purpose in what I'm doing in life. But these are the types of clips that I'm talking about that prior to the old chat, I wouldn't have given it 2 seconds. It wouldn't have resonated. It wouldn't have made sense to me. So now it's like, okay, now I get what you're putting down. Now I can kind of zoom out and add different collective things together to hopefully continue walking down that to meet the standard that is there that continues to grow.
Interesting, Clay. What are you thinking on this?
On what he said specifically?
On what he said specifically, or how he delivers it, or whatever you think about that clip about him and his teachings.
Give me 1 second. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep, good to go.
Okay. So the thing to know when you listen to Jordan Peterson is he all depth psychologists, most of them, or people who are really into that field, symbolism is important. It's incredibly meaningful. So when he starts talking about thorns and foes and enemies, he's kind of setting up this idea that you live in a world where if you don't have an aim, if you don't have a goal, a lot of the times he means like a goal for your soul is the way that I phrase it when I talk to people. If you don't have an aim for yourself or your purpose, you can deviate or become a victim of those enemies or those foes, whatever they may be. They can be an addiction, they can be depression, it could be, that's why symbolism is such a useful tool, is because it can mean so many things to so many different people. So when I hear that, I've listened to a lot of his stuff and I read his books. He's getting to the point of what is your aim, and a lot of the times it seems as though people don't take a moment in their life to sit down and lay out what do you value, what means something to you, and then kind of, I hate to say categorize because it seems like such a like work, but it kind of is. You categorize what you value, and then you start to put into place what is your aim for you as a human being. And he talks a lot about having that sort of aim for yourself.
I'm digging it. Sean, what do you got?
Well, if that's the case, then I guess I do kind of say that on a pretty regular basis. So there's that. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, Clay, because I wasn't overly familiar with, I guess, maybe his formal psychology focus being that deeper symbolic representation. I didn't know that that was genuinely a part of that intellectual focus. There is a symbolism aspect that is to be pursued and used as a tool to put across points to the world. I didn't know that was a formal piece of it. And so that's interesting to me. That kind of helps shape my understanding of the language that he uses, which was always a bit, it didn't confuse me. I mean, I find them quite easy to understand from my perspective. I was just never sure why use the thorns and why talk about, but it does to some degree present the symbolism can create a visual in the mind that someone can enter into, and now they're walking a path and now they're trying to evade the thorns, and now maybe it's a dark night and there's thorns and that's snagging their pants and it's easy for symbolism to start filling in our imaginary space that sometimes we don't. And then hopefully maybe you can identify what that thorn is. Now, coincidentally enough, just before we started the live podcast, I just put up a clip about 4 minutes before we went live. And Zach from mental.ca, as part of Men's Mental Health Month, had talked to me this morning saying, how do we get the word out more? Maybe put another clip out. And I thought, yeah, I'm due. I got to put out another clip to make sure that other men don't think I'm hypocritical and saying, raise your voice, put your word out. And then I'm a one and doneer. And now I'm asking everyone to keep on keeping on. And now I've got my arms folded and I'm sitting back on the sidelines. So I shot a video this morning, and how I did it. Here's my thorn story. So I've got a Cobra Kai t-shirt on underneath here. And on the back, it says, fear does not exist in this dojo. All right. But when I was shooting the video downstairs, I was hitting the heavy bag. My point to everyone that I've already put up on the IG was this. Like, the t-shirt says there's no fear in my dojo, but that is not true. I've got fear all around me. I have fears. I've had fears all my life. And so those would be the thorns, as it were. And those fears, I have chosen not to let them manage me. I will manage them. And as I said in the video that's now up on IG, I've never failed to defeat those fears. But that doesn't mean that the fears are gone. They will come and go. And they will come when they want to. And then I get to decide, is it going to dominate me or am I going to dominate it? And I will not be dominated by something called fear. It's a nebulous term that you can't have an ounce or a cup of fear. You can't pour fear into a cup. Fear is us not managing it. And so I put my point across, perhaps similar in a way that Jordan Peterson just did, but it's my way, not his way. And it wasn't with a lot of deep symbolism. So I see I see a lot of his message that we just saw now in the message that I just put out this morning, just with different words, perhaps, maybe. Who knows?
I would agree. This is why we have been saying this for years to you, is that like you guys sound very much alike. Clay, what do you got?
So I just want to take this moment to kind of point out a lot of things. So the first thing is, so with depth psychology and symbolism, what Carl Jung gets to is that there is an deeper unconscious, say an archaic unconscious, that has manifested since brains have evolved into what they are today. And inside of those, there are just symbols and stories and narrative that go across the ends of time. Like it's a dragon isn't a dragon that's actually flying and eating people. It represents something that everyone who was a hunter-gatherer would see as the most fearsome, scary predator. It's a flying serpent that breathes fire, has feet of a lion, and it's the ultimate predator that can get you anywhere. So the dragon represents this fear, right? So Sean, on his shirt, has the serpent. Jordan Peterson talks about how the serpent is a representation of fear. Crazy how that works, right? So you can start to see now that symbolism, it runs across the collective unconscious. We all know that a serpent is a representation of that which is outside of the garden, speaking in biblical narratives, not about religion itself, but just in a narrative. And if we don't face the serpent, it can take from us our will or our freedom or our sense of awareness. So what Sean is saying is, with the symbolism of a snake, is that if you don't face your fear, it will overcome you. If you willfully face the serpent, if you willfully look for the serpent in the grass, not pretend it's not there until it sneaks up on you, because they're hard to see. You can't see them unless you look for them. If you don't willfully face your fears, you'll never grow as a person. So all of that is why I would say people would put you and Jordan Peterson together, because there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of the same message. It just gets articulated in different ways.
Yeah. Which is, one of the reasons why I love this show so much, is that we do speak about a lot of the same topics kind of over and over and over again, as well as with Jordan Peterson. Like we talk about similar things, but with all the different voices that we've had on the show, we've been able to create different symbols and different metaphors and different things that will help others attach to that thought pattern or that questioning sequence or that system. And I wrote down earlier here, provoking questions. And I think I use the word provoking specifically because that's what I think Jordan Peterson tries to do. The way he speaks, the way he does his oratory systems, it really is about provoking someone to question something. And whether that is the thing that he wants, great. But I think that's what he seeks, is like that provocation to, like, you have to ask more. You have to.
Well, I don't do that, so there's no way we're similar in that sense, right?
Right. You've never provoked someone to ask a question. Clay, what do you got?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so one thing about listening to him talk that I'm the most interested in is, so they teach you as a counselor to never give advice and to ask open-ended questions. So you just never give advice. He because he is a psychologist and a very good psychologist, his ability to keep someone revealing themselves is top notch for him being a psychologist. And it should be, because that's what a psychologist should do, is get people to come to their own conclusions, not give them their own conclusions. So when I watch him, that's primarily what I enjoy the most, is how good he is at getting people to kind of reveal their own thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple comments here.
Sorry.
What do you got? What do you got?
The comments have got to hold just for a sec, because now I'm at a point where there's a question being bubbling in the back of my head, and I'm going to ask it of all of you. So all three of you feel free to pay attention and then answer. So Clay, I'm going to establish perhaps that you have a deep understanding of the framework of his approach based on your background and your deep consideration, etc. And so let's now use Chad as a proxy or as a contextualization. I'm not saying that this is true, but Chad knows less than Clay. And so that's all that's important for this moment right now. And then I would also say I know even less about his framework. So with all of that in place, that doesn't mean that you were initially attracted to him, Clay, because of your deep understanding of that framework. And Chad wasn't attracted to him because of that deep understanding of the framework. And so what initially attracted all three of you to him? Was it his charisma? Was it his storytelling abilities and his analogies? I see a lot of parallels with what he's doing with what we do here on the podcast. I just want to understand the distinction between what was the hook, perhaps, initially that had you kind of snap to attention and start seeing what it was all about?
Let's start with Chad. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, for me, same thing. It was very surface level for me. I didn't know who the guy was. I didn't know much about him, but I, candidly saw him on a Joe Rogan podcast, and through a couple, things that he said there through storytelling, I was like, okay, I need to know more about this guy, because there were some things he said that, felt like it rings true to me, and I want a deeper dive into this stuff. And so then as I start deeper diving into him, and then all these clips that you see on social media, the way that they're told in such a short amount of time, it really captured my attention to really pause and really think and say, okay, now I need to reevaluate how I look at this and maybe expand it, because I had such a narrow view of whatever topic he was talking about at that time. So for me, it's the more I see these clips, and again, winning to the JP University and being part of that audience, it was just like, man, there's so much more I don't know about, right? I had no idea. Like, I'm not a philosophy guy, right? I don't like, these aren't, if there's not a bunch of pictures in there, I'm kind of screwed, right? So it's like, I get it. I understand what you're talking about, but it's not a book I'm going to right away. It just doesn't resonate. But now I'm in that point of like, I need to have deeper knowledge of this stuff so I can contextualize it throughout my life. So it's these little snippets that are out there that I think that kind of reels a lot of people in, especially guys like myself.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I came from it from what really hooked me on him was his steadfastness. Good word right there. But his message never really changed. It was consistent. It was simple. The whole clean your room sequence, the whole, it was, when I read the 12 rules for life, they were all really, really basic systems. It's not like, okay, we're going to change your whole life. You got to do this thing and eat this diet and do that stuff and so on and so forth. It was just clean your room and apply that to the rest of your life. And then you go, well, how do I even begin? And you got to start right there. Clean your room. Okay, well, I'll do that. So there was a consistency. It was a simplicity, but the steadfastness, especially when things started to become controversial with him in the media, and he just, he didn't falter. He didn't balk. He just, this is still the way. I don't care if you disagree with me. This is the way it's going to work. Clay, what do you think?
Yeah, mine was weird. Mine was basically deploying, to be honest with you. And so to put it into perspective, I know Chad's probably deployed as a Ranger as well. And so if you ever in Iraq or Afghanistan or a Middle Eastern country, there's they have these moments where over a loudspeaker, they would basically recite the prayers of their religion. And it was fascinating to me. It was like, how could this belief system be both, because when you meet some people, they're the most wonderful human beings you'll ever meet, even in those places, and then the other people are literally trying to kill you. So it was fascinating to me that out of the same belief, there could be two very, very different behaviors and actions. And I was fascinated with trying to understand belief, because for myself, in a religious context, not to be specific, I never felt comfortable. It always felt foreign. It felt weird. So for a very long time, I've been fascinated with belief. And it seems to be, I can't speak for all animals because I'm only a human being, but it seems to be something that is very specific to human beings. And it can literally make you want to slowly destroy your own life. That's addiction. So with my experiences overseas and with my experience with addiction, I believe that addiction is a void of belief. And one of the only things they know for certain that can alleviate severe addiction is a spiritual awakening. That's quantified too through journal papers, not an opinion. It's something that they know for sure. I've just been searching for more information about belief, and lo and behold, he has a book called Architecture of Belief. And so I kind of got into him, via addiction, via my experiences overseas, and because he had a book basically about the architecture of belief from his viewpoint. So that's kind of where I got hooked. Is he's interested in the seriousness of belief, and I guess I am too.
I dig it. We're actually going to be doing next week's show is all on faith. So this is going to be an interesting one. So if you have any thoughts or questions that I can ask the panel, let me know because I will throw it at them for sure. Now, I do want to touch on these comments because there's some good ones here. Tyler jumped in here. Good to see you, buddy. He says, always love the discussion. Appreciate Peterson's ability to get us to think about how and why we think. Just like you guys. Good to see Clay on the pod again. Good to see you. Katie jumped in here, said, amen to facing our fears. Understanding our subconscious fears helps us to recognize our paths going forward, which I think is absolutely correct. And Dancy jumped in. He said, he really is a brilliant man with amazing concepts and ideas, but, there's always a but, his delivery method and educational arrogance are frustrating to me. Sean, your delivery is direct and clear, which is interesting. I like the way he put that, educational arrogance. That's a good one. Any other thoughts? I got way more videos here. So what do you guys got?
Well, Dan captured it better than I did because I also feel that as well. I do feel that little bit of arrogance. However, in all fairness, I know that I put off an air of arrogance from time to time, or condescending or superior or whatever. Fill in the buzzword that makes you feel better and makes me feel worse. I probably do it. But I don't mean to. I'm not mean-spirited in that way. I just give off a vibe sometimes that I'm still learning to shape with better nuance in live podcasts, presenting to the world about stuff that I know very little about. It's a freight train sometimes. And so as much as I've learned in my life, as many good people as I've had around my life, as many poor jobs or good jobs that I've done, life is a freaking learning process, man. And the vibe that I put out sometimes isn't always perfectly calibrated for the moment, isn't resonating precisely the way that I want it to. I'm always trying to shape the moment with positivity, but sometimes I don't freaking nail it. So if I come across as arrogant or whatever, fill in the blank, it's not because I'm trying to. It's just that I have to get a grip on it better than I have in the past, I suppose.
That's a good way to look at it, I think. And the fact that, because there have been times that I think probably all of us have come across as arrogant or just too big for our own britches, that kind of deal. But any other thoughts before we jump on to the next sequence? What do you got?
No, I think Dan is right. So my wife, she's getting ready to be done with her PhD, and there's this thing right now with Dr. Peterson where he absolutely, any chance he can get, will say how the academic institutions are dead and all of this stuff. My wife cannot stand it. She cannot stand it because where she's at, she's, statistics, not necessarily on the psychology side. It's fine. All the people around her are great. They're not ideologically driven. Everyone's asking the right questions. There's collaboration amongst different departments. So to her, she feels the same kind of that Dan does, that because his experience with his academic institutions, and a lot of what he says is actually true, I believe, but there still is this little bit of arrogance to say that it can never be better. It will always be bad. And the only way to fix it is to outsource, education in some other way. And you could ask some people who are in the academic sphere, and they're looking around like, I don't know what he's talking about, because it's great. So I hear Dan. He's not wrong.
I think this is an interesting point too, is that might change depending on what focus you're in at school, right? If you're in a physical science or like something that is statistics or math based, like there's really no give and take. You either come out with the right answer or you don't. Anything in the social sciences has a bit more flex to it. I think that might affect how the academic process actually happens. Sean, what do you got?
Just a thought, new thought, never popped into my head up until about 15 seconds ago. And for real, it was what Clay was talking about with his wife. And so, brand spanking new idea. I'm curious as to what you guys think. So, I'm not going to ask, is it fair to say? I'm just going to say it. The idea that Jordan Peterson delivers his message in a certain fashion, and that people might be distorting his message to some degree or co-opting his message to operate on 5 or 10% either side of his message, to distort it a little bit to achieve their own aim or to achieve their own message. So in essence, either distilling his message down in a different way or distorting it to control. And I'm not saying it has to be like taking the message and distorting it to shine good light on him or put shade on him. It'll be people who don't necessarily are nefariously doing it. They're just doing it for reasons maybe they don't even understand. But is it fair to say, have you guys observed, and again, I haven't tracked him that closely, that his message can sometimes be distorted 5-10% either side?
Well, I'll jump on that right away. I'd say absolutely. And I think a lot of people will use it to co-opt their own message or kind of bolt on their own message to it, or in a similar way that most public figures have to deal with this, in that the more people that are going to be hearing the messages that you're going to be saying, they already have a preconceived notion of what they believe. So if you're even within, a 10 or 15% variance of that, they're just going to latch it on and be like, yep, absolutely. This guy is totally right because I believe this already. And now I'm agreeing with him. So yeah, absolutely. So we're in the same line, even though they're less adjacent than they actually are. And I've seen that with public figures across the board. We see it with politicians. We see it with movie stars. We see it with everybody. I think as soon as you become, let's say, famous as a word, you're going to have to deal with people co-opting your message. And that's just, I think, part of the game. What do you guys think, Clay? I'll hit you.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to do. Like if you don't, because a lot of what he says is, I guess the best metaphor would be, you guys have children, so I have teenage boys, and it's like, you can sit back and you can watch your teenage boy doing something, and you're like, oh, okay, I know where that's going to take you. Like, I know where that thought process is going to take you. I'm going to let you do it, whatever. Maybe if you ask me, I'll try to give you some advice and tell you, to do something else. But I can see where that thought process is going to take you. So for Dr. Peterson, for Jordan Peterson, being a psychologist for 30 years, and seeing that there are thought processes that people can follow that will probably take them to, either a pathological state or a better state, whichever one. That's uncomfortable for people to know. For someone else to be able to say, I can kind of see where that thought process is going to take you. That's uncomfortable. So if it makes you uncomfortable, you're going to take whether it's good wisdom or bad wisdom, whether my son wants to listen to his dad's wisdom in a positive way or a negative way, they're going to use that to their advantage some way or another. Because it's easier not to listen to the wisdom, but to just use it to motivate you to go one direction or the other. And I think that's what most people do with what he says.
Yeah, I agree with that. Chad, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the arrogance thing definitely rings true. I think some of that comes across too as it's probably frustration on his part, right? Because he's, from being a teacher over at Harvard and up in Toronto, and I don't know, Clay probably knows the full gambit of it, but they're essentially trying to take his license away because of things that he has said. So I think some of that arrogance comes off as a frustration. I was like, kind of like, hey, screw you guys. I've been in this academia world forever and I've towed the line, but now that I'm not towing the line, you guys want to speak out against me and you really want to hammer me and try to take my license away. So I think some of that arrogance it probably is rooted in some kind of frustration of how he's been dim lighted by some of the universities and things that have happened in Canada, and then also being part of Harvard and stuff. So that's just kind of how I guess I look at it and I take it.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking for sure. And there's been a few times where his demeanor has broken and you can see the frustration come out. Just it is, and it would be. I mean, you spend an entire lifetime working for a particular organization, and then all of a sudden you say, whoa, we're going a little too far down an alley, and the entire organization flips on you. That would be a struggle. I got a couple comments here that I want to hit on, then we'll get into a video. Seb Lavoie, good to see you, buddy. The Slav Commander says, the sound bites of Jordy P are massively less helpful than listening to him for hours, which I agree with. The brilliance of his mind is unmatched at current times, in my opinion. Yeah, absolutely. Katie jumped in here and said, I think Peterson is a very good facilitator and takes his audience on the journey with him. He's a great persuasive speaker. As in all things, discernment is necessary, which is not always following the general population norms, which... Again, totally agree with that one. And I mean, I went to his Night to Change the World or whatever it is. I don't remember the actual title of it, but I would agree. Listening to him speak over an entire process gives you the full gambit of what it is he's trying to get across, because his entire speeches are the whole metaphor. Like the entire hour and a half that we were there is one metaphor broken down into 15 or 18 different metaphors. The clips, you're only getting that little snippet, and then that's easy to co-opt into something else, to your point, Sean, because you're only getting a piece of it rather than the entire thing. Yeah. All right, let's jump into another clip here. I'm just going to pick one at random. Here we go.
People can't think. Not really. Most people think by talking. It's really hard to think, because to think, you have to ask yourself a question. That's hard enough. To actually ask, you have to wait for the answer. Then you have to assess the answer critically, which means that you have to divide yourself up into 2 or 3 people, each of which has a different opinion, and have them argue about something, like in the theater of your imagination, to assess the idea. That's hard. So normally what we do is we talk to other people, or we stay muddle-headed and confused. So listening is half of thinking.
Bam. And I think that kind of creates a point, at least in my mind, in why a lot of people don't like him, is because he talks to people like that, where just most people can't think, and then they're like, wait a second, I can think, and then it becomes a personal attack rather than listening to actually what he's saying. I'm going to start with Sean on this. What do you think?
Yeah, I got no issue with any of that, and probably because I sometimes say it even more direct. And does that make me a bad guy? Does that make him a bad guy? Who's the bad guy? Me or him? Or are either of us bad guys because we talk so direct? And again, I've already established it's not because I'm uncaring or mean-spirited. I just have my way, and maybe my way should be done better. But I am direct, and it can be challenging for a lot of people. And I've found that the people who are challenged the most are the people who feel they're the most confident. A guy put up a quote. He quoted me just a few days ago on his Instagram page. And I guess it's something I said back in February, and he's hung on to it like a hook in his mind. And words to the effect, it said something like this: if you think you're a talented person, you just haven't been around enough talented people. And so that idea being that, to some degree, I think we can all start to drink our own Kool-Aid. Not maybe think we're a big deal, but think that, yeah, I got a few things figured out. And then if you come up in my space and start telling me how much you've got figured out, I'll be listening. I'll be absorbing. And the next words out of my mouth will be a free flow of what what I feel needs to be said in the moment directly and clearly. And that can be challenging. And it's not that I've got a bunch of plays stored in my playbook and, I'm just waiting for them to finish to stop talking so that I can randomly grab a play and just blast it at them. That's not the way I am. That's maybe how I was when I was younger. But now like the podcast, as I've said quite a few times, I just simply try to exist in the moment, absorb the wisdom as it's flowing through me from the guest who's speaking at that moment. And when it is my turn to talk, I let it unfold wherever it comes from. The wisdom that comes out of me at that time is not calculated and trying to get one over the other person. I'm simply doing my best in the moment, but it is typically direct and it is typically clear. And if someone shows up overly confident, it can be sometimes crushing for their confidence in that moment, and it will create a dissonance. And it's not my intent to make someone feel that uncomfortable, but I'm most comfortable delivering direct messages, and it can cause friction for sure. So I agree with him, and I can see how it can happen.
Yeah. And there have been a number of direct conversations that we've had that make me feel uncomfortable for sure. Clay, you got any thoughts on anything of this?
No, I mean, I think the clip was a good one to kind of show exactly what you guys were talking about with the arrogance of basically, most people don't think, but then he goes on to describe, the reasons why, which is what, I think Seb and Chad and everybody's alluding to, is if you listen to the entirety of what he's talking about, he can seriously lay it out. And, that's another moment where if you know about Jordan Peterson, he has a self-authoring program. And the point of that is to lay out both your early life, your life now, and then what your life in the future, lay out your values. So if you know that he's the kind of person that has taken a lot of time to critically think through every single detail, and that's what he does, is critically think, then you're not so offended when he says you don't critically think, because to that level, I do not, and I strive to, and I aim to, but it is a little bit of an ego hit when someone with a high level of intellect basically looks around and says, well, most of you guys don't think. And you're like, okay, grandpa, of course I do. That's the feeling. But if you listen to him, he might give you some wisdom.
That's a great point. And we've actually, Sean and I have had a conversation about this a couple times where I said, I think I'm a pretty good shot, or, I'm pretty good at whatever. And he'll just go, oh, really? You think so, do you? And it is that similar, right? If you surround yourself with people that don't know a lot, then you're going to be a step above. But if you really, really push yourself to be surrounded by people who are a step above that, you're going to realize that you actually are way down here before you come close to reaching that height. Chad, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm way down here before I'm reaching those heights for sure. And it's for me, sitting through this and always, being on a panel with you guys or listening on my own, whether I'm at the gym or whatnot, I used to be such a reactive guy, right? Like Sean said, I had a couple plays in the playbook, and I figured instead of listening to the full context of what was being said, I had to have that response, right? Because I had to react to it. I had to say something. To where now it's like, no, I can really sit there. I can soak it in. I can adjust to it. I can understand it. And then I can zoom out and realize, okay, like, why do they think the way they think? And I understand it, but why? Give me more to it. And I understand why Jordan says that clip, because same thing. I didn't think. I just reacted before. Now I could wholeheartedly say that I can sit there and there's 4 or 5 different Chads having 4 or 5 different conversations at different angles from a different topic. So I can look at that and not try to come off as such a brash turd sometimes, and really, really try to understand how other people might view that topic. So yeah, I mean, you want to talk about levels. I'm at that beginning stage of learning to listen so I can be at more depth in these conversations. Before I didn't. It was just how quick can I shoot the arrow and get rid of it.
That is a really good point. One of the things that I struggled with actually when we first started the show was being able to listen. Just sit and listen. And that was one of the most challenging things that I had to do because I had to run the show. I had other things to do, and I had to be able to do all the da-da-da-da, right? So I thought that there was a responsibility, I guess, and from my point, that I had to respond. I had to have something to say. I had to. Versus now, I'm perfectly okay listening and passing it off to somebody else, and let me hear some more information from you, and maybe I'll pass it back, and I don't need to say anything while I'm talking into the mic. Sean, you got any other thoughts?
Yeah, I do. That's a perfect example, Chance. You are almost a case study in how life can be done better, just in this podcast scenario. You did initially have ideas that you really wanted to put across. And the moment that I saw you have an idea, because how much time have we spent together? We should be married. It's
so many
ridiculous.
hours.
But I can look at Chance, and I know not exactly what's going through his mind, but I know where he's at any split second of the day. And so early on, I'd see him like target lock on what he wanted to say, and whoever the guest was that was talking for the next 10 minutes, forget about it, because Chance had shut down until it was his time to put across his point. Well, that was way back in the day. That was right at the start. But he had to screw things up a bunch of times. I had to screw things up a bunch of times. We screwed things collectively up between the two of us a few times. And so you got to make mistakes in order to better understand how to talk, how to listen, how to think, when to shut up and when to just do better. And so I don't think it matters who you are. Certainly on this live format, the collective podcast, we've had all kinds of guests show up from a diverse background, all kinds of intellectual levels, all kinds of life experiences. And invariably, it's a tough moment because you can have really diverse thought and wisdom, and the opportunity in front of all of us is to play with it and make it better. And sometimes if you're not used to those kind of formats, it takes a while to adopt the format or adapt to the format. And I'll ask you guys specifically, Chad and Clay, the first time you came on the show till today on the show, I personally see you as two radically different guys on the show. But what are your thoughts on how you've evolved over your time just in podcasting, and if that reflects what Chance saw as a case study on his growth on the podcast?
Mm-hmm. Chad, what do you got?
Yeah, I think I'm completely two different individuals, and I'm still growing and still learning, Again, it was how quick can I get a soundbite out there, right? Because we're in a soundbite world. So it's like, I got to say something that's catchy, and I got to say something that's cute and funny so it'll stick, and didn't really listen to a whole lot because I wasn't used to a format. And I wasn't used to sitting through here and listening to someone else's opinion and bringing it into my own thought process and, trying to figure out how to say that. It was just, again, it was an immediate, how quick can I get something out there that'll be cool and maybe resonate with somebody? It'll be a soundbite. To where now it's, I think, as you've probably even seen when I've come on here, now it's like, nope, I don't have any of that. I'm just going to shut up. I'm going to listen. I appreciate you guys. I'm just going to sit here and hold space. So I've grown tremendously via just you guys and just life experiences that I've had wholeheartedly in these last 5 years. I've learned a ton.
Bam. I love it. Clay, what do you got?
I mean, you guys know it's been huge. I think I told you like the second or third time I was on, I was like, man, this has completely changed like my awareness of myself and how I present. Because the first couple of times, I'm trying to have notes and I'm trying to come up with this thing, and it's to that clip of Jordan Peterson, there's the persona. The persona is competing with Sean's persona, and Chance's ego is competing with my ego, not in a bad way, but they exist, right? And so it's like we're just it felt like a competitive sphere, but all of that only lived inside of my head, right? So then you start to realize, you're like, oh, okay, so I have these competing aspects: the ego, the persona, and then who I want to be seen as, trying to come out. And the whole entire time, who I actually am isn't even speaking. It's these other people. It's these other things. And now, finally, you know, with you guys, thankfully being patient enough to have me back, is I'm starting to be able to not only be that way with you guys, but just to be that way publicly when I'm speaking to people in general in my life. And I'm starting to remove a lot of the, you know, obviously we can't be perfect, but I'm starting to be able to be more authentically myself, I guess, and let that be who speaks more than the persona or the ego, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, dude, I've seen it for sure, 100%. It's been awesome to watch the pair of you. But Clay, to your point, you really do feel quite settled right now and just, you know, in your groove. Not the groove, but your groove. And so building on that, I have a follow-on question then that popped into my head as Clay was just rounding out. So if generally speaking, it's fair to say that all four of us have evolved through podcasting to whatever degree, maybe not an order of magnitude, but we'll say times one. If we've all evolved, and again, I've already established, I don't know Jordan Peterson's pipeline trajectory. I don't know how different he is from a year ago till now, or 2 years till now. I don't know. So what are your perspectives on how much he's evolved? Because Chance, you've already established that you appreciate his constancy, his steadfastness, I'm not going to say staying within his lane because that would be incorrect, but keeping maybe a tighter bandwidth on his delivery and the direction he's going and his focus and etc. But that doesn't necessitate that he's trapped in non-evolvement. You can be focused like a laser and still evolve along the laser blast. So we're evolving. Do you see him evolving?
Clay, I'm going to come right back to you. What do you think?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, to not get specific to religion, he has definitely changed. I would say it dramatically has changed. So there was a period of time where he had really bad health issues, and a lot of it was probably due to the stress of fighting this proverbial system out there of non-critical thinking and institutions and all of these different things, and it has since came around to being more specific and adamant to a religious context to a large degree, which to me, I would almost say that he probably was not very religious. Well, I don't know if he was or if he wasn't, but it's very obvious now that he has taken a turn towards internal spiritual well-being that he didn't make very obvious at the beginning of his injection into the media. So yeah, he's changed a lot in my opinion.
Yeah.
So with that said, and I didn't know, but I do have I'm a curious guy. Can I have a follow-up question? Just one more. So with that said, do you find it interesting, or do you find it appealing, or do you find it helpful as a viewer of Jordan Peterson or as a follower of sort of some of his insights? And by follower, I don't mean like you're like a cult. I just mean like you're tracking. Do you find it helpful that he's now sort of discussing or exposing this more inner search or spiritual framework or structure that he's starting to build for himself, that he's maybe starting to talk about a little bit? If he would have done that 10 years ago, do you think that would have been beneficial, or do you think it would have been a detraction from where he is right now? I hope that makes sense.
Clay, come right back to you.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Seb, I think very much along the same lines as Seb when he had made his comment of, I believe that we will look back and Jordan Peterson will be one of the greater philosophical and psychological minds of our time. So, say what it is, follower, whatever. But what's interesting about that is that because he is on that intellectual sphere, that his reasons for coming to the conclusions that he's coming to are not willy-nilly. They're not just because they're being it's not because it's going to benefit him in any way. Because most of the things that he talks about do not benefit him in any way. It actually makes his life more difficult, and most people's lives more difficult. So I think that he is coming around to more insight into the spiritual realm, probably because he's done due diligence, and there's a good reason to. And for me, as someone, I don't view myself at all on the level of intellect as he is, rightfully so. Not just because I'm not as smart, but just his body of work as a human, right? He's done a lot of academic work. I have not done that. But his intellect, he's not getting to where he's at just because it's cool and it's cool for the time. It's probably quite the opposite. He's getting to where he's coming from because of deep insight, and I want to understand that insight as someone who respects his analysis and his thought process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm tracking. And to answer your question, Sean, and then I'm going to get Chad here on your thoughts as well. I think that had he come out 10 years ago with the religious-based teachings or understandings or philosophies that he's bringing up now, I think it would have been a major detraction for his, let's say, rise to fame. Let's put it that way. The fact that he kind of, I don't know if he kept it under wraps. I don't know if he just didn't discuss it or just got into it recently. But I think the fact that he has very recently started to talk about the religious aspects of it from a storyteller's point of view, which, Clay, I mean, you were talking about the deep psychology of it and the symbolisms and all these things. I think that's where he's coming at it from. But had he done that 10 years ago, I think it would have been a major detraction from his own success in that moment, in my view. Chad, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's evolved, right? Obviously, we just made that case in point to where he was, not talking about religious stuff, 10 years ago, to where now he's integrating that a little bit more within his speeches to connect dots to different folks, right? So on a personal level, I don't know what his day-to-day goals are. Maybe his goal was to do 50 push-ups a day, and now he's only doing 20. So that's evolving, right? He's evolving that aspect. So I don't know, but I can definitely tell through his talking and teachings, like there is a different slide there, but he's still very consistent with a lot of his stuff. And I think that's why you get so many people that follow him, because he has such a huge breadth of work. Like Clay said, I mean, he's been doing this 35 years. So he is an expert in this field. So you kind of tune into that, but it's kind of cool to see how he's navigated these waters to get where he's at.
And to that point, I have actually a clip of his old work. I say old work, but like when he was teaching, he used to record a lot of his lectures, and I have a piece of that I'm actually going to pull up here in a second. But the messaging is the same, to your point, Sean. Like, he has that steadfastness of the message, but he's become a better orator. He's become he's better in front of the camera. He's better at elucidating his points. He's gotten better with experience, similar to how we have through the podcast. So
why is that? Why do you think he's trying to get better?
I think so. In my mind, I think he wants to get better for the same reason we want to get better, because that should be the goal of anything. If you want to do anything, you should do it at a high level.
Sure.
And I think that he sees it in a similar manner of, if I'm going to be on TV or I'm going to be on social media, I need to be the best guy on social media. And he surrounds himself with a team that is fantastic. Like the video clips that he puts out are top notch. The interviews
not as good
he
as
does
yours,
are all,
Chance. No way.
They're a little bit better than mine. There's a few things that I can recognize that are above my level for sure. But let's take a look. This is from his old, from his old piece here, and you'll be able to see an immediate difference. So here we go.
Who rated themselves high on happy would also rate themselves high on social. And those who rated themselves low on happy would also rate themselves low on social. And by looking at those patterns of covariation, you can determine what the essential dimensions are of human personality. One of the dimensions is roughly happiness. That's extroversion. Another dimension is neuroticism. It's a negative emotion dimension. So if you ask someone if they're anxious and they score high, say on a scale of 1 to 7, they're also likely to score high on another item that says that they're sad. And it turns out that negative emotions clump together, and so that people who experience more of one negative emotion have a propensity to experience more of all of them.
Bam. So you can see right there, like the ability to, the way he moves on stage, the way he delivers, the way he speaks, all these things are very different from then to his newer stuff. But on that thought, when he's discussing, negative emotions clumping together, is that something you guys would agree with? What do you think, Chad? I'm going to hit you.
Yeah, because they just build on top of each other. I would have a negative thought process about something, and then there'd just be one more pillar add to it, and then another, and then another, and then another. And before you know it, you're depressed, and you're on pills, and you're doing all sorts of other stuff, and you're not making right decisions, and you don't think you're worth anything. And for me, failure always came with punishment. So I was always scared to step outside the box, because I knew if I failed, there was going to be some kind of punishment tied to it. So those negative emotions, when they pile on top, it's really hard to get out from underneath it. To where now, if I've got a negative emotion, I can set with that emotion now. Why do I have that emotion? Why is this eliciting the reaction that I have now with this emotion? So that clip there, I mean, you can set with that and dissect that all you want. But for me, it just rings true to, like, when you're in the crap, those things just continue to pile on. It's really hard to see outside of that.
It's the old Simpsons trope. You got to dig up, stupid. Clay, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's so what he's talking about. So like personality, there are a lot of different personalities, and personality in the realm of psychology and counseling is a very, very big space to be inside of. So what he's talking about is what they call the big 5 personality traits, and that's 5 personality traits that everyone basically agrees on across the board exist. It's Ocean, OCEAN. And on those, so O is openness, C is conscientiousness, E is extroversion, A is agreeableness, and N is neuroticism. Neuroticism, what he was talking about in the last one, of those 5, there's a continuum on both ends, right? Where it's like neuroticism is a tendency towards negative emotions. So you could be the kind of person that doesn't tend towards neuroticism, so you're on the far end of the continuum, but all of us are within the continuum somewhere along the way. So an introvert would not be extroverted, so you would be on the other side of the continuum. So when he talks about negative emotion, a lot of people tend towards negative emotion or neurotic, and it's good to know that about yourself, because it doesn't mean that your negative emotions or your neuroticism will go away. It just means that you can be aware that you have a tendency towards negative emotions when things happen. So I like it. I think when you see him there, he is in an academic setting, and he is acting as a professor in academia. When you see him now, he is removed of those constraints and is now operating in a sphere that is letting his intellect kind of go where he wants to go with no real restriction. So to me, that freedom of being able to express your thoughts, I went to one of his live lectures, and if you watch him, he's just thinking and going, and you just are there to listen and watch it go. And if you can follow, it's great. If you can't, you just wear a nice suit and feel a little bit less smart than you were when you came. So it's like, I love seeing his evolution, because if all goes well, we're going to be able to see a great mind kind of give us, well, I mean, who knows actually, because sometimes great minds can self-destruct. So hopefully it ends in a positive way and we get some really, really good pieces of work out of him, like his most recent book. Or it could be tragedy. Let's hope not, though.
I think we've gotten quite a bit of really good work out of him already, so we'll see what happens. Who knows what's going to happen. Sean, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, that was an excellent overview, Clay. Thanks for that. And it does raise an interesting point. Your last point. I think I said it recently on a IG clip that you've got to be freaking possessed. You got to be almost like freakishly focused, target locked, not uncaring of the world around you, because actually you've got to care so much about the world around you that you have to kind of lock a portion of the world out to pursue like a lunatic to shift the needle in a tangible way, in a way that is notable, and not notable for you, but for those around you. So if you're really trying to serve at a higher level with potency, then you have to go all in, and you have to trust not yourself, but you have to trust your body of work in the universe, whatever that means to anyone out there, whether that's through faith or religion or spiritual. Like you've got to go all in and cross your fingers that the supporting structure around you is actually gonna let it happen. And that's what I see him doing to some degree. And that's why my earlier question of now that he's framing things up in a form of religion or that structure of faith per se, I wasn't fully aware of that. And so I do find it interesting that perhaps he's shoring up his inner fears, his inner thorns, his inner doubts, his inner struggles with his own personal world, that this has become a part of it. And by inserting that into his life, which is not at all a negative, quite frankly, it is definitely a positive. By inserting this into his life, this is in essence extending his life. Quality, for sure, quality of life is being extended, but perhaps his actual life. So now to my point, generally speaking, what I've seen, anyone who has high intellect or is extremely academic, but is extremely focused on serving at such an extremely high level beyond themselves, to have that kind of possessed pursuit, as Clay said, it can turn out something magnificent, or it can be a road to ruin. It can destroy the person. And so in a way, I'm happy to hear that maybe he has now a structure that is going to extend his potential destruction, as it were. What do you guys think about that?
Chad, I'm going to start with you on that. What do you think?
I don't know if I got much to add on that one. I would have to sit with that a little bit more, I think.
Raj, Clay, what do you think?
Well, so I would assume, so he it's all well known, right? So I'm not saying anything that is like I know him personally or something, but so, he was an addiction specialist, very famous for some of his work, and he had an addiction problem to prescribed medication, and it literally almost killed him. Like he almost died because of it. And so there are alcohol and the pill equivalent of it. If you withdraw from it without professional help, you will die. You can die. And so he had to seek that kind of help outside of the United States and Russia. All of that to say that I think and I hope that he went through his most dark period, and it seems like now he's kind of on the up and up. And Sean nailed it. His health is better. His cognition when he speaks is, he's obviously he's an older gentleman. He's going to not get any younger. It's better. It seems like his thought process is better. He seems healthier. All of the above. But again, you just can never predict what may happen, inside of people, and especially people who are in the public view all the time. It can seem like things are better and they're really worse, but I believe that he's on the up and up, in my opinion, and it would seem that way. Now, is it because he's changed a spiritual aspect? I think it's been there all along. I think he hints at it, and he never claims anything, and I don't think he ever will. But he was deeply obsessed and fascinated with tyranny and how it affects the social environment of the world as a whole, and he is obsessed with figuring out how to prevent that from happening again in the world. And maybe he can absolutely help. It seems that he is helping prevent that by fighting the bill. I think it was C-17 in Canada at the time. So luckily we have someone like him on our side as far as, freedom of speech and not allowing tyranny just to happen unbeknownst to the public, through government channels or whatever. But I feel like he's on the up and up. I hope he is. I wish that is the case. But any good soldier will tell you can't count your chickens before they hatch.
That is the truth. Hurry up and wait is the big one. And then it's always, you never know until your boots are on the ground. That is 100% true. So there's actually an interesting side piece that I want to touch on here. And we have a question on this. So I'm going to hit the question first, and then I'm going to show another video, and then we're going to get into it right here. So Dancy asked earlier, and he said, my question would be, is he shoring himself up for personal growth or viewership? I'm not an expert in his work by any means. I'm just curious what you think. And so with that question in mind, I'm going to throw up this video. And this is a video of his newer academic works, part of his new series. And it's actually the piece on Jung. And so we're going to put this up. I want you to think about that question, and then I'm going to ask you guys after. Here we go.
Is who you could be if you were everything you could be. So imagine the self exists as the totality of your potential. And you might say, well, what sort of reality does that have? Because it's only potential. And Jung's answer to that was the potential of the self calls to you and appeals to your conscience. So as you're making your way through life and something grips your attention and compels you to investigate, that's the attempt by the thing you could be to lead you down the pathway to become exactly that. It's a remarkable thing to think that the things you encounter that grip your attention and compel your interest are manifestations of the spirit that's attempting to transform you into everything that you could be. And so the calls line up. If you follow the spirit adventure that pulls you towards your quest, then your personality expands, your being transforms upward to the point where you're something qualitatively different from what you are. That will reveal itself in a manner that makes your life a blessing to you, and that does that in a manner that's maximally beneficial to everyone else.
Bam. So now on that, you saw the previous video we had was his earlier academic work. This is his newer academic work. You can see the evolution between the two people and the delivery and all that other stuff. But do you think this is personal growth? Viewership, monetary benefit? What do you guys think? Sean, I'm going to hit you. What do you think?
So just looking at the video, establishing first point of discussion, I will say this, there's not a word in that I disagree with. In fact, I've said that exact same thing so many times. It's like I can hear it with my own voice, so that's sad. Now, the next piece is this, that Dan asks an excellent question. Is he growing for his own personal growth, or is he growing to encourage viewership to then monetize t-shirts and hats and whatever? I don't know what he sells at JP universities. I don't know. Personally, here's my stance. I freaking don't care, to be honest, at this point, because I only care about the outcome. If he's doing it for the right reasons, the wrong reasons, but if the outcome is righteous, if the results are positive, not negative, if he's working on the right side of the force, not on the dark side of the force, then ultimately it doesn't matter. And I'm now going to use myself as an example to make this case, and I'll do it quickly. So I think most people who will be listening to this later today are listening to it live. Maybe even Seb is on here right now. Seb and I have been co-authoring a book together for the last few years. And right now has just kind of finished off the manuscript with a boatload of writing. And throughout that entire process, we're both writing it together, but I've had my head buried in that manuscript, hard grinding it every day. And so throughout the process of doing that, I've gained from it. I've grown from it, but I wasn't doing it for me. I wasn't writing the book for me. It just turns out it's the book that I needed for me. So I was doing it for everyone else. I was writing it to serve higher, to serve my friends, to maybe make their lives better. So in essence, I think maybe the two can coexist. I think that you can do it for reasons that are higher than you. And viewership, expanding your viewership to some degree, if you're a righteous, positive person, sending out the right vibe, you deserve to be heard more. He deserves to be heard more if that is in fact what he's doing. But in so driving to that higher service, you freaking gain yourself. My personal growth has grown because I'm trying to serve at a bigger level. And that's the way it is for me. I think that's the way it is for most people. And I hope that that's the way it is for him.
Makes sense to me. Chad, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I nail on the head with everything Sean said. I think through Jordan doing these different talks and these different things for his university, those are all personal growth things that he's gaining through learning, different topics from different people that he's bringing onto his university, right? And I think that personal growth resonates with, dudes like me, because before, like, I didn't know who Jordan Peterson was. Like, none of his stuff really touched me. But because he's coming at it from an authentic approach and a true approach, his viewership is expanding. I don't think he sits down and, at the desk and says, well, let's talk about this topic and let's see how many more viewers I can get. I don't think that's his mindset. I think he leads from a place of topics that interest him, and he's trying to do better for the collective of humankind. So we all think a little bit differently and look at things from a different, context or scope. So, I don't have much more to add. I think Sean hit it on the head, but I think everything he does, I think it's personal growth for him, and he probably reflects it that way as well. Yeah,
for sure. Clay, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just kind of have to like step back and look at like the video that you put out in and of itself, and what led to that moment. So the whole premise of him being at the Peterson Academy and giving that lecture, and you can see it was on the burning bush, is because there is a specific ideology that is contaminating a large portion of the academic institutions in multiple countries, and without it being an opinion, it's clearly not good, right? Because as Sean put it, the results of the ideologically driven academic sections and institutions that are harboring it, bad things are happening both for the people, for them, and for the community at large. So he's there at Peterson Academy to distribute as much world-class knowledge and insight by not just himself, but world-renowned academics for the lowest possible price to reach as many people as they possibly can. If that's not for good, then I don't know what could be. So to me, his whole thing in his religious perspective is, or not even religious, just in his perspective, you'll hear him say it over and over and over, is our lives are not about us. Our lives are not about me. Our lives are about doing what we can for the betterment of people around us. Not only does that make us better, but it alleviates a lot of the ailments that come with mental health problems. So to me, his personal growth on making education at a high level affordable to increase viewership, to Sean's point, I think they're not mutually exclusive. I think they're both intertwined. And that only happens if you're at the level of influence that he is. And I think he's trying to take it the right way, in my opinion, which is as much good education as you can possibly get. How is that bad? I don't know.
I 100% agree. And I actually watched an interview with him. I can't remember if it was one of his first went on the Jordan Peterson Academy spiel. Like, he went on the tour to try to promote it, and like, this is what we're doing and this is what we're trying to achieve, et cetera, et cetera. And he actually laid out that the best system to proliferate information is capitalism, in the fact that if he utilizes the capitalistic system of low cost, high level education, more people will buy into it because they can. And the more people that buy into it, that will proliferate the message, which will then feed back into the capitalistic. They can have more money to add more things to boost production levels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which creates more. It's a feedback loop. So to Dan's question, I think that it's both. I think he's absolutely going for personal growth, and through that, it is for viewership. And I do think that there are probably meetings where they sit in the office and go, okay, well, this is what we're going to talk about. This is what the next show is going to be about, et cetera, et cetera. How do we get more viewers? How do we get more people involved? How do we create more of a system similar to the way Sean and I do it, right? We sit down at the end of a show and we'll go, okay, that was a pretty good show. How do we get that to more people? How do we get more people involved? How do we get more people on the collective, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think those, as you guys are all pointing out, this is it's a benefit to the system all around, rather than any one particular thing. I will say, though,
not to interrupt you, that my caveat to that, or my but to that, is, and obviously I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, whatever, is what I don't want, though, is for, and he does this a lot, and again, I mentioned it earlier, it drives my wife crazy, and me too, to some extent, is I don't want the youth coming up, like my son, he's going to college next year, he's going to ROTC. I don't want them to think that all academic institutions are these ideologically driven dragon chambers. I don't want people, I think that the academic institutions should be revitalized, not thrown out. And that is the one thing I would say, if I could voice an opinion on the matter, is don't throw out all academic institutions, because there are some bad ones.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is for sure. Which has symbolism in and of itself, and maybe he should do a talk on that one. We could go from there. I got some more videos and stuff, so we can touch on anything else. Any other thoughts before we jump on? Good to go. All right, let's jump into another one. Here we go.
I wanted, and if I could avoid responsibility, why not lie? And the first answer is, well, what makes you so sure you want to avoid responsibility, except narrowly in this moment, because it's not a good medium to long-term strategy and everyone knows it. And what makes you think that manipulating people in the short term so that you can gratify a whim is going to be a useful iterative strategy? It's like it's not. So you can dispense with that. And so what do you do when you tell the truth? Instead, is you predicate your actions on an axiom of faith, which is that nothing better can happen than that which happens if you live in truth. And that's a statement of deep religious faith, because the evidence for that can only be gathered as a consequence of manifesting the actions that are predicated upon that axiom of faith. You don't know till you lay it out.
Bam. I think this goes right in line with what we're talking. I'm getting lucky on these videos. Sean, you got any thoughts?
Well, what he just basically did was condense the podcast we had just recently on authenticity. I mean, specifically, He just said what we said just the other week. And so I've got not even a word of disagreement with what he laid out. However, I think one of the struggles I have with it is that, there's a lot of $10 words in there. And I love me some $10 words. I do. It's a fun little game I play with myself. But that doesn't resonate with everyone. And so my question to you guys, I mean, give your response on the video, but ultimately I want to get back to, do you think he is either overly wordy, which I have a tendency to be, or do you think he's overly intellectual in some of his word choices, which I can also be? I'm curious not just for him, but I'm also curious for me, the way that I do things and how I can maybe do it better in the future. That's the side quest.
Chad, what do you got? I can see you saddling up. What do you got?
I don't know if I'm saddling up or not. I'm trying to get on the horse. Yeah, I mean, I think it can be a little wordy, right? I always call myself the knuckle dragger, right? Because the philosophy of this stuff, like a lot of it's over my head sometimes. So I have to sit with it. I try to pick it apart and try to bring it down to layman's terms. But in that clip for Jordan, what that got for me is like getting rid of ego and getting rid of the need for that quick dopamine hit. Like the truth, right? If you speak that truth, if you set with that truth, it might not be comfortable, but you're also not going to win with that quick dopamine hit. That's going to hinder you down the road. That's kind of how I took that. But yeah, it does get a little bit wordy. It does get a little bit confusing on the $10 words, because I don't think there's a whole lot of people that can set with the $10 words and all the wordiness. I'm probably in that 50 cent to $1.50 word range, so, and I'm okay with that. I know where I'm at, so I get it. I love it, but it takes someone like myself to sit there with that a little bit longer and really try to dissect it and zoom out and try to understand, well, what the hell is he talking about? What does he mean by this? And so I can get a couple of those words, and then I can kind of, I guess, translate it in my own knuckle dragger language, where I can be like, that's a good aha moment. I get that now. I get where he's coming from. I just don't need all this fluff and all this other $10 word to go with it, because that confuses the hell out of me. So that's, from a knuckle dragger, that's what I can give you.
Interesting. Clay, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I guess I have a little bit of I guess a little bit more experience because I unfortunately have to listen in the background to my wife talk about statistics. So I know when he's using like iterative and some of these other words, I know that what he's doing is he's referencing studies. So I know when he's starting to use those words, he's actually referencing studies, iterative and axioms, and he's probably in his mind referencing information that he's got. But because I know that, does that make it more digestible? Absolutely not. I mean, like probably almost definitely not for most people, because it is such a it is a specialized area to be in the statistics and study and analysis, statistical analysis space. It does deter people like, me and Chad, who are infantrymen on like, like what, I get what you're saying, man, but could you just give it to me in a way that like I could go outside and do something with it? I couldn't even try to explain that to someone, what you just said. I couldn't even, so I do think it does make it a little bit hard for most people.
I would agree with that. I think it does. See, I'm coming at it from a different view, because I actually like it. I like the $10 words, and I like when people speak in ways that utilize the vocabulary. Like, we have a vocabulary for a reason, right? We have a depth of... we have a massive dictionary. We have a massive thesaurus. We have reasons that these words are used and reasons why they're not. And it actually forces me, if I don't understand a word, to then go look it up, to go, oh, well, why? Interesting. And then I can actually use it. I can add it to my lexicon. Another good word. But the key to that, I think, is that, yes, it does separate some people who don't have that natural curiosity to go, what the heck did that word mean? And then go look it up and then try to add it into their own vocabulary. So it is a struggle, because for some out there, they just don't want any of that. They want a simplified, almost a reductionist view of what it is he's trying to get across. But the philosophies that he's trying to get across require those words. They require that level of vocabulary, at least in my mind. That's where I'm coming from. Sean, what do you think?
Well, nothing to, I don't want to interact with everything that the guys just said because I love it. Now, I've just got a little bolt on that popped into my head as you're wrapping up, Chance, and it's this, that I find for myself in the journey that I'm in when I'm podcasting, now that I'm speaking, I want to do it in a way that I'm also having fun. And by fun, I don't mean like knee slapping, ha ha, like this is awesome. I just love having fun on the podcast. I feel pretty awkward on podcasts. I feel like I don't even belong on our own podcast. And so, I'm just looking for ways to, to some degree, not entertain myself, but appreciate the moment more than just service to everyone, to include myself. But I'm also trying to inject just a thin layer of I'm having fun with this right now, in a way. And so the rich tapestry of our vocabulary that we create throughout our lives, that's what I'm playing with, is my tapestry right now of language that is not amusing me, but is making me feel like it's okay to be in this moment and kind of enjoy the moment through language. And so my question to you guys is this: do you see that from him at all? Do you see him playing a game within the game? Do you think he plays a game within the game? I always do. Do you think he is as well? What were your thoughts?
100% he is. Yeah. 100%. I can see it for sure. Clay, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that there is a kind of, so like when you read, let's just say if you read Nietzsche or you read Jung, there's a thing that people say. They'll say something along the lines of, I had to reread that one paragraph like 5 times. It was so dense. And I think that that's appealing in the intellectual arena. I think that it's appealing to get as much information in the least amount of words as possible. But I think that can become too robotic almost. Not robotic. It can become soulless. It's almost soulless. And so when you take what Sean just said, where he kind of merged it with this artfulness, if you can take that tapestry of words and make it artful and soulful and get a condensed point across, I think you are playing a game within a game. And I think that game can be beautiful and it can be fun. And I think that that's what the great poets used to do. That's what good writers do. But I do fear that sometimes people can get too robotic and soulless and not artful enough. And then vice versa, people can be too like willy-nilly with their words and say nothing while they're saying a lot at the same time. So yeah, I do believe he plays a game within a game, but he is a author. He is a writer, and I honestly I would hope he is playing that game, because if he's not much of a writer, in that view. I will say for myself, going back to the original point, and I'll shut up, is that I used to fear, I'm in the area that I live in, Southern Virginia, I'm not the typical, I look different than most people. And I always used to be afraid of like people knowing that I read a lot and using big words because I would be made fun of. So I do hope that in you, Sean, and you guys using, better words and better phrases, and Jordan Peterson doing it as well, that it gives kids out there that are smart, that aren't from the right side of the tracks, to not be afraid to figure out how to use those words and do it in a way that isn't embarrassing, and to be authentically yourself and speak in a way that is beautiful, because it can feel like you make yourself out of place a little bit if you do.
I 100% agree with that. And Chad, before I come to you, I just have a quick little thought on it. Is the fact that I watched a video a while back of a poet, and he was talking about how the ability to use the full range of your vocabulary is what makes you a good writer or not. And it's not so much about just throwing words at a page and then you get word salad and like, oh, great, I have a bunch of big words. It's about utilizing the word for what it's for. So using the term lexicon for an example, you don't just throw that out there on a regular basis, but when used in the correct sequence, in the correct terminology with the right context, then it makes perfect sense. But just to randomly talk to everybody and be like, yeah, I have this quite a massive lexicon of words in the background, like, it doesn't make any sense. So I believe that it needs to be used more often, to your point, Clay, to make it a bit more normalized. That way, when you utilize your actual vocabulary, it doesn't come across as inauthentic. Chad, what do you got?
I like the word Rolodex. It seems real easy.
That's a good one.
No, it's, I love it. Like you said, I like the $10 words because it does. I'm in a space now in my brain where I want to go look it up. I want to learn more. I want to understand it. What does that word mean? But if I'm being honest and authentic myself, and anybody else that follows, what I'm doing and preaching, is I'm not the $10 word guy. I'm not that guy. I'm just not. I'm okay with it. Like, challenge me. I want to learn it. I want to understand it, but it's not my wheelhouse. And I'm not going to pretend that it is in my wheelhouse. So I like listening to these conversations that are in depth, that have bigger words and meanings behind a tighter paragraph, because then I can kind of look at that and dissect it. But it's not nothing that I automatically float towards. Like, Clay was talking about Nietzsche. I just started reading some of his stuff because why? I learned from listening to Jordan Peterson. I'm like, well, who's this Nietzsche guy? What is he even talking about? Right. So this person who's a philosopher many, many years ago is now just coming into my, view and trying to understand what he's talking about. So for me, I love it, but it's not my wheelhouse. So to dumb it down, I think it resonates a little bit more with a bigger audience, to maybe make us a little bit more curious, because quite honestly, the bigger words will scare you away because you just don't understand the context behind them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one. I actually just started reading some Descartes, and it is beyond my range at this point, but it's proving to be a really good challenge for me. Now I have a quick comment here, but
I want to clean a couple of things up there first.
Hit it.
So labels. Chad, you've said it before on previous podcasts, and you're saying it in this podcast about you're a crane eater and all of that good stuff. Well, I disagree. That's the label that you've slapped on your chest, and that's the one that you're trying to own, but that isn't true. You're a smart guy, and you've demonstrated that time and time again whenever you've been on the podcast. And if you hadn't, then you wouldn't be here. And that is the word. That is the word, the label. We all have to drop that label. I used to think when I was in high school that I was stupid and an underperformer because that's what I was being told. But I had to get out into the big bad world and apply some curiosity and some action to start understanding who my authentic self was. That took a freaking long time, man. That was a hard grind. That was reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of people, and doing a lot of thinking. And that's free to everyone. Frickin' everyone. And if you can't afford a book, go to your public library. It's all available to us. The entire body of knowledge of the human existence is right there on our phone. All you have to do is tap into it, pay attention, start seeing the beauty of the knowledge that's in front of your nose. But the label that says, I'm not that guy, maybe one day I will be, is just saying that I never will be. And so anyone who's got a label on their chest right now, tear it off and re-own what you want to be, what you know you are inside, but the label is holding you back. Now, that's not specific to you now, Chad. That's to everyone who's listening. Because I had to do the same thing to myself when I was a kid, when I thought I was a skinny, underperforming, dumb kid. That wasn't the case. That's just what I believed at the time. But I shaped it up differently, as everyone can. And in respect to these $10 words, I don't think, lexicon, while it's an impressive word, It's how you use it and when you use it and why you use it. Because if you're trying to impress the world with your lexicon, but all the intention is to be impressive, that doesn't entice. That doesn't create curiosity. That actually creates a smarmy, intellectual down talk. And so the trick I feel with a richer tapestry of vocabulary is to use it in a way that is less like a sword thrust and is more like, use your own analogy, to entice someone into the conversation where they just kind of cock their head a little bit, not too much, but not too little. Just to have someone bite on something and not really realize maybe the fullness of the moment, but later that day, it's that seed is being planted and it's just going to chew and chew and chew away until they have a new realization, a novel thought that hopefully they come back to you in the future and say, man, you know what? I've been thinking about that and ... That's the payback. That's when the person is like bringing new wisdom back to you. I look at it as an investment. Vocabulary, language, speaking to someone, listening to someone, being in the moment with someone. It's like compounding interest if you do it well. The moment with them creates a result, but the moment they come back, that's the compounding interest when they deliver the order of magnitude back to you. I could talk about that all day, but I just want to make sure that, again, now this is not at you, Chad, that anyone who's listening, the big words and the rich vocabularies, I look at them as a gift to any listener who has the curiosity to see how many words they can introduce into their life and how they can approach others around them in a richer way.
I love how you put that there, Sean, because that actually happened to me exactly as you laid it out. I used the term ballywick with a friend of mine, and he didn't mention it at first. And then like 3 or 4 days later, he came back to me and he was like, dude, I looked up the word ballywick and I got to tell you, and he went on this whole spiel about how he figured it out, worked out the etymology of it, where it came from, why it's used, so on and so forth. And it just made me smile while you were describing that, because it was like word for word it happened. And then we got a comment here. Katie jumped in and said, words are powerful and they have great power for change. And I think this is crucial. This is one of the reasons why we don't swear on the show, because words are powerful and they have great power to change. Now we're almost at 2 hours here. And I just wanted to say thank you guys, because Clay, Chad, Sean, this has been really, really a great exploration of not just Jordan Peterson, but how he interacts with the world, as well as all the things that he's doing and some pieces of his philosophy as well, which I've just dug this conversation a lot. So let's get some final thoughts. Anything on Jordan himself, anything on his philosophies or his teachings, or anything about what we've talked about today? Chad, you first.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. Like I'm very new into the Jordan Peterson thing, right? You know, I'm diving deep into it. And so for me, the more I start learning, the more I expand, right? My ability to understand things from a completely different level. You know, so again, I always appreciate the invite on here, because I learned so much just sitting here and zipping it up and listening to you guys, and just being part of this forum. So I appreciate it.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you here, brother. It really is. Clay, final thoughts?
Just, yeah, if you like them or don't like them, just approach, his philosophy and his desire to pass on information with an open mind. That same as you would if you were. I have to throw in jiu-jitsu at least one time. If you were a jiu-jitsu person or a practitioner and you went to another academy and there was another black belt, you would be optimistically skeptical, but you would be open, right? So if you like them or don't like them, just be optimistically skeptical and don't take everything he says as gospel, pun intended, and then don't just discard it because there are snippets out there of him seeming a certain kind of way.
Bam. I love it. And see, we had 2 hours. I didn't bring it up first. Clay brought it up first there. Sean, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad you beat me to it. So I'll say this, that I really enjoyed this conversation. I really did. I learned a lot. I had fun. My mind is more expanded because of this conversation. I'll tell you what, though, I am disappointed that we actually didn't cover more videos as an opportunity to kind of explore some other areas of his thoughts, etc. And I feel that I'm partly responsible because I just had too many questions. But I wanted to learn as much as I could in this. Maybe I was a little selfish in all the questions I had, but hopefully others that are in my shoes who are still trying to understand some of this stuff, hopefully they gain from it as well. That said, I feel like we could do this again, boys. I feel like if you've got some more videos, Chance, and if you guys are up for it, I'd love to learn more. I'd love to explore some of these ideas more. I had fun. Thanks.
Let me ask you this before we shut her down. Has your opinion changed? And if so, how?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. I would say this, so I'll be careful and say my opinion of Jordan Peterson has changed to some degree, for sure, a bit. But like my opinion on a higher order of thinking, a higher subject, an overarching theme that Jordan Peterson is simply a part of, I'm thinking about a few things differently as well. So, the game within the game, Chance, I do appreciate a good game. And so I'm trying to observe this moment through many levels right now, not just Sean's perspective, not just our perspective, not just the viewer's perspective. I'm looking at the future. I'm looking at a number of things right now in this very moment that are games within games. And that doesn't mean it's nefarious or bad or evil or wrong. I'm all of those levels that I'm currently operating within myself right now are all for the positive, are all for good reasons. So has my opinion changed on a number of different subjects in this conversation? To some degree, yes.
Bam. I like it. And to anybody that's out there, I would love to have Jordan Peterson on the show. And if anybody's got any connections, by all means, send them my way. We can get that set up because that would make for a really interesting conversation. We could talk about him with him. That'd be.
I would love to.
That'd be cool.
Make it happen.
I'm working on it.
Do your job.
I'm trying my best here. Now, I do have a couple last comments I just want to touch on real quick here. Dan C. jumped in here. He said, even though I'm not a fan of his work, the video just tipped the scales to write my book, F&A. Thank you. So Dan's going to be getting writing right away. He said, no, I am a fan of his work, just not so much of him. So it's good to see. And then Katie jumped in here and said, thank you. This has been very insightful and inspiring. Keeps my head in the game. Good to hear, Katie. Keep working hard. Other than that, I got nothing to add. I think this has just been awesome. Thank you guys. And as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see you next time. Chimo.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see you all next time.